Hi, I'm John and welcome back to my Lair of Action Figures, where I'll be talking and reviewing figures from different manufacturers. Today, we're going to be having a look at not some G.I. Joe stuff, but we're going to be looking at some Sideshow. Of course, like Hot Toys has just announced a few weeks ago that they were going to be making an Imperial TIE Fighter pilot, I decided that it would be a good moment to review the Sideshow version of it. As you can see, there's two versions of the figure that came out. So the first one, who would be this figure over here, is the first one that came out, and that one was number 100294, and it came out in January 2015. The suggested retail price for that figure was $199.99, and the other figure that is over there, who's over here, this is one that came out for the Rogue One movie. So that one has the number 100416, and the suggested retail price of this figure was $209.99. It was limited worldwide to 2,000 pieces, and this one came out in August 2017. So these are the two figures. I'm not going to be reviewing this figure today because it does not make any sense to review it, because this is not the one that Hot Toys has made. So let's talk a bit about the Hot Toy one. The Hot Toy one, of course, is going to come under two different numbers. So of course it's going to have the MMS 798, who's going to be the one that Hot Toy gives him, and the one that is given by Sideshow is 914,268. The suggested retail price of this figure is $245. So of course it does put this as a pretty expensive figure. Of course, the Hot Toy figure comes with two blasters. The regular version of Sideshow comes with only the regular Stormtrooper blaster. But if we have a look, there is also an exclusive version of this figure, and that means that figure also comes with the Kenner blaster. Now let's have a closer look at what we get in the box. So let's take a closer look at the box. Of course, this is the standard boxes from Sideshow, and of course you can see that they are typically the same. They haven't done anything much interesting about these boxes. These are not my favorite ones. If you go and have a look on the Battle Droid review, you will see the reason why I'm saying that these are not my favorite ones. Because when you open the figure, of course, you can see over here, you have nothing, no information. I think this is something that Sideshow should have kept to give us a little description of the figure. As you can see, the figure is in his box and everything is neatly wrapped. Everything is tightly in there. Of course, as you can see, this is the problem with these boxes. They have a tendency of opening, so you would have to put a bit of glue. You can see that they're magnetically hold together, and that's going to be it for the box. Let's have a closer look at what we get in this box. So let's do some unboxing. So of course we're going to come up over here gently, and we're going to be removing this figure over here, and here we go. As you can see, it is pretty simple. This is always the big joy of these boxes. As you can see, we're going to be removing this. And now let's take this guy out of his box. Of course, you're going to have a bit over here. So, as you can see, it breaks down into two compartments. So, here we have our Imperial TIE Fighter pilot. As you can see, you have a blaster, you have, of course, the base to put him on, you have a stand, and we have 4 hands for the figure. Let's say 6 with the ones who are on the figure. Of course, we're going to be taking out this figure. Of course, like I said, the exclusive version of this figure does have, how do you call it? This blaster from Kenner Star Wars figure, who is given with Hot Toys. Now, something very interesting that I do like to point out, because I didn't see it on the Hot Toy version, he does come with a blaster holder. So that's something that is pretty neat, and I like the fact that he has it. I think it's a nice add-on. Now, when you're looking at this figure, of course, you have this arm patch. He does not have any pens or the little silos to unlock doors, who could have been a nice add-on. But when I'm looking at this figure, you could easily custom him and remove this part, remove the helmet, and you would put a helmet, regular head sculpt, and you could put one of those Imperial Navy helmets from Hasbro, and you could custom yourself a Navy officer, you know, the Death Star commander that Hot Toys has announced but hasn't come out. But anyway, I digress. I will explain why that figure is one of my favorite when I will be reviewing and talking about Hasbro Black Series figures. So, as you can see, he's pretty neat. He has a few details over here. I mean, there's not much to go for this figure. It is a pretty basic. Of course, some people may reproach that these are not leather, these are not leather. But afterwards, anybody who's been collecting, especially people who are in Asia or in any country who has a high heat and high humidity, will know that these things do not last. The head sculpt looks pretty neat. Everything on it is pretty neat. Of course, over here, Hot Toys did a little change over here. They put this over here, has exactly the same as a Stormtrooper behind. So Sideshow didn't do it. Of course, you have to remember that the figure nearly came out 10 years before the one that they did. As you can see, the articulation is pretty firm on Sideshow, who's a pretty impressive, because normally this is something who has a tendency of moving around them. Anyway, now that we have looked, this is the basic stance. Well, they're a bit thicker than the basic stance, as you can see. So that's something of interesting. It's not the flat surface like you would get normally. So you do have a bit of basics. As you can see, it is pretty simple. But yeah, I would have liked to have maybe a little inscription in front saying, hey, you know, this is the stand who goes with our Imperial TIE Fighter pilot. Now let's open here, let's remove this little piece of scotch, and let's have a look at the blaster. So the blaster is the standard blaster from the Stormtroopers. Can't remember what it is. I think it's EB11 if I'm not mistaken. It's been a little while since I have had a look at it. You have, of course, the hand to hold the gun. You have gloves, open position, more relaxed hands. Then you have this hand over here. It's a bit hard, maybe it's to go with the blaster to put underneath, like to be able to hold it. We'd be having a look, yeah. This comes over here, and you would have, of course, the blaster will be held in this way. So that's why for you get this kind of hands. Of course, something that I always liked with Sideshow compared to Hot Toys is that you have every hand has its own peg in it, and they're a bit deeper and feel less fragile than the ones we get from our friends at Hot Toys. Of course, the stand, let's finish this off. As you can see, this is pretty neat, pretty solid, and holds pretty well. But like I said, I would have highly appreciated to have a name tag on this. So now that we had a look at this, let's give him up and have a look at what are my final thoughts about this figure. Let's give him a spin on the table with his gear in his place, and we have a look at all of that. Now, before maybe giving it a final spin, I was thinking maybe to talk about what do I think about this figure, and do I think does it have a collectible value, and where does it put it due to the fact that Hot Toys has announced theirs. And as you can see, this fits in perfectly. And that's the question about it. Is this still worth something? Now, I always have found out that Sideshow has a bit of a better hold into the collectible value. The fact that Hot Toys has lost a lot of credibility on the collectible market with their 2.0s, relaunch, repaints, you know what I think about it, who's a huge garbage and is going to kill the secondary market. As soon as you have, your figure will be worth something, but the moment that he comes out and that the figure doesn't have any more oops, okay, this one is a bit of a surprise. Didn't think this would happen. So, as I was saying, that the thing was a bit surprising with these figures is the fact that if you really want, Hot Toys does not have any secondary market value the moment a new figure comes out. They're going to come crushing down. Anybody who still has it knows they're going to be losing money on it, and they will not be able to repurchase a second one by selling the old one, except if there's a major disaster. and the new one looks worse than the original one, then you might have some chances to be able to get something a bit better on that behalf. So as you can see, this strip clips in pretty easily. And there we are. So that should do in this way. So coming back to the fact of the collectible value on these figures, I think Sideshow will hold better in the time frame. I don't know if this Hot Toy one will do anything better on long term, but I think that the Hot Toy one may have some kind of value to it, because it's not the best army builder figure out there, let's be honest, because the fact that it's pretty limited, except if you want to do an Inferno squadron, if you want to do something else. So I don't think the, how do you call it, the Hot Toy ones will be so much praised or even researched. Especially the only way that Hot Toys could really pull something out on that behalf would be by giving us an Imperial TIE Fighter in 1/6 scale. So then these figures would be highly looked after. But I guess if Hot Toys is going to come out with a TIE Fighter in 1/6 scale, there's high chances that they're going to be also giving a figure with the TIE Fighter. So that's why I think this one has a high chance of collectible value on this behalf. Now that we have talked about the collectible value, let's give this guy a spin so you can admire him under all his different shapes and forms, and I will give you my final thought about this figure. So what are my final thoughts about this figure? Now, anybody who grew up in the late 90s or even in the early 80s who had a computer, of course, that came out when you had the PC. Everybody remembers, for the ones who are fans of Star Wars, that there was 2 games who came out. The first one was, of course, X-Wing, where you would have a flight simulator where you could be in the X-Wing cockpit, or you could be plenty of other Rebel ships, so that's something that was nice. And then we also had a TIE Fighter pilot, so where you would be able to get this secret tattoo on your arm. So, of course, if you like all the dogfight in Star Wars, you're going to want this figure. It is something that you really need to have, as the same as an X-Wing figure. Now, my big issue with this figure, of course, you couldn't give much more, and I can understand the Sideshow exclusive comes with the Kenner Blaster, who's nice, who could have been included for it. The Hot Toys does have it. But, I mean, the price of $199.99 for a figure that comes with, let's say, 6 hands, a blaster, I'm sorry, Sideshow, that's way too expensive. The other figure may have a bit more working details. I will be reviewing it at a later time, but that's $210. So we are coming to the other price, $245 for the Hot Toy figure. Now, of course, that's the basic prices for Hot Toy figures. But really, why would I want to pay $245 plus taxes and shipping to get that figure? That puts it as a very expensive. Again, if you're a fan of the game, or even if you play the later games with the Inferno version of the TIE pilots with Ado version, so that could be something that could be making it valuable. But if you want to do a custom figure of that one, you would not be going on the one that Sideshow did, neither the one the Hot Toys did. You would go on to the Medicom version. Now, I did have the Medicom version, but I think I sold them. And the ones I had, I sold them. One of my best friends had a good idea. Due to the fact that Medicom is a bit smaller, he had a Hot Toy female body. And what he did, he used the uniform and the gear to put it on the female body, and you could make a female pilot. So that's something a bit interesting. But again, something who's so expensive, I don't think this figure is worth $245. If it's Hot Toys, it's not worth $200 at the time it came out in 2015. This is a figure who should have not been sold for more than $150, $149.99, like they like to say. I would have said that would have been a decent price, and I would have said, yeah, pick it up. It would have been a great figure. So for me, this is one of the price the price is way too high for this figure, and this is something who's a bit of a shame. Now, of course, when you're looking at the secondary market, you're going to say, but John, if you go and check this guy on eBay, he's going to be around $400 or $500. Yes, it is true. That is the problem when you don't have any kind of other way of getting it. The way that Hot Toys is coming out, this figure is going to come down, but it's not going to be going away for $100. Nobody's going to sell it less than $300 because that's how it goes with the Sideshow stuff, because Sideshow doesn't remake this stuff like Hot Toys. So if you want this figure, you don't have the other possibility than to pay it full price. Now, personally, I bought a few of those, so I do have some left in stock, but I wanted to do a scene where I would have two TIE pilots working next to Darth Vader, who's a big reminiscent scene from the Star Wars A New Hope, when they're talking about that there's a few X-Wings that broke off and that they're going to hunt them down. So, as you can see, this is a really nice figure and something that I really do like because I'm a nostalgic of the game. So I'm going to be giving this figure, because it's pretty well done, I'm going to be giving him an 8 out of 10. The only reason I'm not giving him a higher note, it is because for $200, this figure is not worth $200 in 2015. Like I said, it's not worth it. Now, if this figure would have been $150, I would have given it more of a 9 to 10 out of 10 because they really did a fantastic job. So anyway, that's going to be it for the review of my Imperial TIE Fighter pilot from Sideshow. If you like this kind of review, please leave a like, share, comment in the section. If you have any suggestions or any other videos that you would like me to make, please let me know in the comment section. Also, if you did play X-Wing TIE Fighter pilot on your PC, please let me know also and tell me what's your best souvenirs that you had around that game. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic day and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!